have today. We're talking Be Made for Big Things. And we're talking TalkXplore. That's the topic for today. And we're going to be talking about a whole lot of interesting things for youngsters. And we believe inspiration that drives people through TalkXplore. Established entrepreneurs through leaders and motivators will give inspiring and entertaining talks to students who want to know more about new age technologies and are willing to be upskilled. These talks will provide an inspiration. And it's very important to set this context. So these talks could provide an inspiration for those who want to build their future in technology. Why is this so important? Because India has the youngest population in the world, and they can be a great workforce that can meet the needs of the global enterprises if they are skilled and rightly skilled for the jobs that they are expected to do and the jobs that are going to grow exponentially in the coming decade or two. To make themselves future ready, technology can help the youth leap ahead. So it's my honor to host Debjani Ghosh, president at NASSCOM, and a veteran of the technology industry who's led the India unit of one of the most iconic companies in the world, that's Intel Corporation, as the first TalkXplore speaker as well. As someone who's worked with schools in India to drive adoption of PCs in the past, and who's now working with governments and global companies to drive technology adoption, the opinion of Debjani Ghosh and the thoughts that she has will be an inspiration for the youth. Thank you so much, Debjani, for joining us on this very interesting and important conversation, and where you'll be talking to the youth directly. But first, from you, I'd like to know about your journey, this journey that you've had. If you can tell that story to the youth, something that will inspire them as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashutosh. And congrats to you and the team for creating this platform and having these conversations. I think it's absolutely the need of the hour. We have to have these conversations today. Ashutosh, someone very recently asked me, sum up your journey. Sum up your journey in a tweet or sum up your journey in 5 words. I don't remember, but it's one of those questions. And I was thinking about it, and I said, if I have to sum up my entire journey, the 25 years or that I've spent in the industry, it would be being comfortable with the uncomfortable. That has been the essence of my journey. From being an economics graduate who took the leap, joined not just the tech industry, but one of the leading tech companies. And of course, I had the gender on my side too. At that point, there weren't too many women in the industry. To figuring out my value add in the tech industry. And a value add I absolutely had. And frankly, the value add was the fact that I was different from everyone else. The fact that I was different I had a different mindset from how the engineers looked at a problem. And that was my biggest contribution in value add. From understanding my value add, coming to terms with the fact that my difference is not a weakness, but it is actually my biggest strength, and learning how to leverage the strength. And then, of course, growing in my career to vice president at Intel, etc., and then taking this big leap of faith to leave the corporate sector, join NASSCOM. I mean, honestly, looking back today, one of the best career decisions that I have taken in my life. It's always been about, diving headlong into a very uncomfortable situation and then figuring it out how to be comfortable. And if there's one thing I will leave the audience with, Ashutosh, is I think this entire journey and everything that I've talked about has been possible because I've walked on the shoulders of giants, truly. I mean, the kind of people that I have surrounded myself with, the kind of mentor ecosystem that I've been able to build, the sponsors that I have in the industry and out of it, um, none of this would have been possible without that ecosystem. And I think that's one thought I would like to leave the youth with, because yes, you can go alone a few steps. Absolutely, you can. But if you're in it for the marathon and not the sprint, and you're looking at building a career, be it as an entrepreneur or as an employee of a company, the ecosystem, the network of mentors, sponsors is what travels with you and frankly shows you the way. So I'll stop there, Ashutosh, and we can have a discussion around it.
Surely, this is a very interesting one that you mentioned, because you work with so many entrepreneurs, so many professional managers across the industry today, and particularly in the current role. In the past, you would have met several of them in your as part of Intel, but this part gets far more interesting and far more varied, I would say. So just remind the viewers that we'd love to take your questions. So please keep them coming in, and Debjani will be very happy to take some of your questions. But please, the point to note is some of the things she did right, and she referred to one of them was having the right people around you. But even before, Debjani, I'd say, it begins with the ambition. So when you were growing up, tell us one of those stories, one of those wonderful stories, which many people know and many more don't know. So the playing cricket with the family members and some of those as well.
So, I think the best thing that happened to me is I grew up to absolutely crazy parents who did not believe in stereotypes. Middle class family, working parents, but absolutely did not, even for a minute, subscribe to any kind of stereotypes. I mean, there was no role for gender in our house. My dad would cook when he wanted to. My mom would drive when she wanted to. And this is years back, right? There was nothing that was driven by gender. And I think I'm tremendously blessed to have been born into a household and born to parents who actually frankly didn't give a damn about the gender. And I grew up in a typical joint family, large family. So we had a lot of cousins, siblings growing up with. And lo and behold, I had around 12 elder brothers or cousins or whatever, but I call them brothers. So one of the favorite family hobbies was playing cricket, because we had a full team. And when I was a kid, it was always about me becoming the referee, like sitting somewhere and screaming out or whatever. And then at some point, and this was when I was very young, so at some point, I started realizing that being a referee was not fun, and started sulking and not joining the game, etc., which Dad noticed. And then he came forward and asked me, why are you not playing? And I said, I don't want to be a referee. And he said, okay, so why don't you go bat? Or why don't you ask them to give you the ball? And I was all of like 5 at that point, but I still remember, I mean, these are some of these memories, they sort of etch in your mind so deeply. I still remember the sort of what was going on in my head is, but I've not seen any women play cricket. So the immediate assumption is we don't play, right? So, and that's what I asked Dad. I said, can I? And his question, he said, okay, let me check. And do you have hands? I'm like, yeah. Okay, so you can catch the ball, you can catch the bat. I'm like, yeah. Do you have legs? Yeah. Okay, so you can run. Do you have eyes? Yeah. You have ears? Yeah. Hoping you have a brain. I still remember that last word. I said, hoping you have a brain. I was like, yes, of course. So he said, now tell me, why can't you?
Yeah.
And I think that was the defining moment for me. For me, since then, Ashutosh, every point in time where I have faced one of these can I or can I not situations, I have quickly changed the question to, do I want to do it? For example, I did start playing cricket and I realized I hated playing it. So I love watching it, but I hated playing it. So I said, okay, I'm not going to play anymore, right? But that was my decision. So I think I gave myself the right to choose what I would like to do and what I wouldn't like to do. But
Mhm.
never, never, ever, and this is the one thing I tell all the women that I mentor, never
Mhm.
ever should we question our ability to do something. As long as we are willing to learn, as long as there are people willing to teach, we can do anything we want. We have the hands, we have the feet, we have the brain. What else do
Ab-
you need?
Absolutely. So it begins with that want, as you said. You must think that you want to do it. You must think it in your mind. And that urge should be very strong so that you can go ahead and do what you want. Exercise that choice. So when you at Intel, early enough, again, that particular interview that you had, and of course, how you had your mentor, how could the youth today probably choose one of those mentors? Your story is one of the more interesting ones I've heard. Please tell us that story as well.
But there are several. Are you talking about the first interview?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that particular interview.
Okay, because there were several such instances at Intel, but the first interview was, I was literally forced to go for the job interview because I, at that point in 1995 or 1996, I had no idea what was Intel at that point. I knew Pentium, but I didn't know Intel. And when Intel called me, I was like, nah. And, again, my dad was like, no way, you have to go. You have to go for this interview. They will know, they may not hire you, but that's okay. You will go. So I walked in, and that was the first time I met a woman on the other side of the table. Because at that point, when you walked in for interviews, and I had gone to several places, and I was actually about to join what we call an Ivy League company at that point in time.
Mhm.
There were always men on the other side of the table. At best, HR was playing the role. I mean, a woman was playing the role of HR or whatever, but never a business leader. So that was the first time I walked into a room and I saw a business leader, the head of sales and marketing for APJ, um, sitting on the other side, and she was a woman. And I think that was the moment when I realized that um, what my future will look like. That
Mhm.
I have a future. It's not about just taking a job on till you get married or whatever. I can start my career and become her. I
Mhm.
can be her. And
Mhm.
I think that sort of again completely changes your worldview of how you look at your career and what you
Mhm.
want to do with your career. And funnily enough, I still that interview, and she still remembers and laughs about it. That 1 hour plus time we spent was all me questioning her rather than she questioning me about, how did she get here? What did she
Mhm.
do? And I related a lot to everything she did, especially the fact that she too was non-tech. So, so yeah, that sealed the deal. And I knew that if Intel gave me the offer or gave me the opportunity, this is the company for me because this is where women rise and women get positions, leadership positions. So this was the
Right.
company for me, and I stayed there for 21 years.
Wow, what a story. So the youth which are logged in, which are watching, they have something, a semblance of what they could also do. Now, in the Indian context, Debjani, a lot of people come from a background which may not be so storied, so spoken about, but again, it begins with the mind. If you want it, you can possibly do it. What will you tell those youngsters? And if I may ask you to add, because I do believe it's very important to the women who want to make that change as well.
Ashutosh, it's a very, very interesting question you ask. I think what I would like the youngsters to realize is that this moment in time is an immensely interesting point uh, for them to be stepping out into what you and I would call the real world or be taking the first steps to start their career. I mean, the only sentence that comes to mind when I think about describing this point in time that we are living in is, if I can paraphrase Dickens, it's the best of times and it is the worst of times. I mean, on one hand, you have the pandemic, which has brought on, degrees of suffering and loss that we have never seen, what we call the winter of despair. And on the other hand, it has also unleashed a spring of hope in terms of, the hope in human ingenuity above all, and our ability to use technology, and to use our own capabilities to drive change, to be a better future. Ashutosh, I do not believe that we humans have had the opportunity to really drive change the way we have driven it over the last 2 years. And that's the point in time where anyone who's planning a career or starting a career, that's the moment in time that you're entering the workforce, or starting your own company. A career doesn't have to be joining a company. A career can absolutely be starting your own company. And I think it's very important to keep this in mind, because what is the biggest need at this point? The biggest need at this point is for people to be able to be the best problem solvers that they can be. Honestly, if I have to sum up, that's the biggest need. And what do you have to do to be able to solve problems? You have to be able to see beyond the obvious. If you cling on to status quo and you say, I want to go back to how it was, you're not going to solve anything. You're just going to scrimp, and that's the last person we want to touch, right? It's about someone who sees an opportunity in this chaos, in this crisis, in change, and says, okay, this is now something that we can solve. This problem is creating this opportunity. And how do we solve this opportunity? Someone who is curious enough, who cares enough, who's engaged enough. I mean, that's the kind of person we're looking for. Someone who has the basic foundation, yes, whether it's tech skills, communication skills, teamwork, but is able to very quickly unlearn and learn as needed on top of that, so that they build the skills to solve the kind of problems that exist, right? Someone who knows how to work with people, get the best out of people. I think those are some of the things we are looking for. Today we are hiring for aptitude over anything else. Honestly, we are not hiring for skills, because the skills, unfortunately, do not exist. So we are hiring for two things. We are hiring for aptitude, and we are hiring for trainability. How trainable are you? How quickly can you unlearn, and how quickly can you learn? That's what these are the two things the industry is looking at. And I think that's what our youngsters have to realize. It's no more about, I got 98% or 99%. It's also no more about which university you have graduated from, while it carries some weight. But a lot of companies are preferring to hire people who are school dropouts, because they are much more trainable, or in vocational courses, because they're much more trainable. So the entire mindset is changing. So I think it's important to think about, what do you have to do to grow an aptitude that makes you relevant in today's ecosystem? And how do you become a continuous learner? And how do you project that you're a continuous learner? I mean, the worst thing they do is when they mug up names of 5 books, and they come into interviews and they tell you, these are the 5 books I've read. And if the person, God forbid, the person on the other side has read even one of those books and wants to get into a conversation, that's it. That's just it, right? So I think these are some of the things the youngsters have to realize. 30 minutes in an interview, these are the 2 things you should leave the employer with.
Okay, very interesting. So some, 2 words that I heard from you was learning and unlearning. That part is very important. So there's also a question which is coming, which says, which 5 industries will be priority for women for their career building purpose? Would you like to tell the youth directly about it? It's very simple to put those 5, but the detailing is where it is really needed.
First of all, Ashutosh, I don't subscribe to that generic, generalization of industries and say, okay, yeah, one thing you can do is look at which industry has high diversity. Like the tech industry has around 38% women, 50%, so, and it's one of the highest. So you could say, okay, the tech industry. But ultimately, it's not about the industry. It's about the company. It's about the company culture. I mean, one thing I advise women when you are signing up, look at how many leaders, how many women leaders are there. If you have the aspirations to become a leader, please look at the company and see how many women have become leaders in that company. Does the company have enough women on its board? Because that tells you if it's a company that really values diversity or not. Value, it provides equal opportunity. Forget about diversity. Is it a company that provides equal opportunity? So I don't subscribe to the generalization because even within the tech industry, you might have a few companies which are pathetic when it comes to being equal opportunity employers. So I would strongly advise that look for companies where you see women reaching the top, where you see women being very successful, because obviously those are the companies that values talent above anything else.
Okay, I'll just give a cricket analogy and something that you might also relate to. When Kapil Dev, before he made his India debut, went for a particular, first-class match, the food that was given, he almost refused. He said that this is not a fast bowler's diet. So I think some people need to take that stand. If you want it, you'll be able to do it, I guess. Okay, but let me take the next question. How do the youth view and seize the opportunity that, that this learning and unlearning provides or gives? It's almost like you're living that. So maybe you would like to look for clues and look for cues, what to ride on.
See, this is something you have to live. It's not something you do at a point in time and you don't do for the rest of the week, etc. This is like the air you breathe. It's as simple as that. And how do you seize the opportunity? I think the best way to seize the opportunity is to give your curiosity a free hand. See, when we are kids, we are very curious. We pick up every little thing. If you look at a baby or a toddler, they'll pick up every little thing that comes their way. They want to open it up. They want to see how it works. Somewhere as we grow up, the schooling system, etc., teaches us not to be curious, to sort of follow the textbook. The first unlearning is that. How do you unlearn those 12 or 16 years of follow the textbook and follow the rules? And once again, start, have the confidence, have the courage to let your mind free, to let your mind go free, to let your mind start looking at issues, start looking at the world and start thinking about why is this way? I think that's number one. Second is you have to have the willingness to challenge status quo, because you will never learn if you accept everything that comes your way or you accept the past as is. There's no hunger to change. There's learning comes from the hunger to change, right? So you have to start challenging status quo. Why is it that women are not getting paid the same as men still? And starts, by a lot of women feel when they say that they're going to be seen as troublemakers. No, you're not. You're absolutely not. It also depends how you do it, but if you're challenging status quo, you're asking for data, you're asking for the facts, you're not a troublemaker. It just shows that you care enough, you're curious enough, right? And there's just one example I'm giving you. And then if you are interested in the problem, then how do you build the core skills that are required to solve that problem, right? If it's about technology, how you build those technical skills, or it's about domain, how do you build the domain skills? And the one thing I want to leave you with, it's never too late to start learning something new. I mean, we learn something new every single day. I took a complete 180 degrees career change when I moved from Intel to NASSCOM, even though it was the same industry, but the work was completely different. I had to unlearn around 80% of what Intel had taught me. And I had to learn completely new about the startup ecosystem, about IT services, product companies, everything, so that I could do a good job. But to me, that's if I'm ever unlucky enough to get a job or an assignment where I can sleepwalk, where I don't have anything to learn, I will not last a day. I know that. So for
Okay.
me, it's always about being uncomfortable and then figuring out how to be comfortable in that situation. And you know the situation has to be challenging. It has to
Absolutely.
demand more from you. That's what brings out my best, my A game, as I call it. And I
Mhm.
hope that's what will bring out your A game too.
Okay, so there are more questions coming in. Adnan Ahmed says, what are some of the top areas for skilling for the next set of businesses? You spoke not specifically of skilling, but you spoke of aptitude. So that becomes very critical in the way you are approaching a problem. And also,
Yeah.
if I may add, sorry to interrupt, if I may add, what you did by leaving Intel and then later joining NASSCOM was not exactly part of textbook. You don't really leave a company like Intel, which is almost 70 years old. So, and a leader in its area.
Well, you do. So, it's it's about where do you get the biggest learning opportunity. For me, every career does, even within Intel. I spent 21 years at Intel, but I have done so many different roles. I mean, every 2 or 3 years, I changed my job in Intel. And it was always about where can I learn the most. And one of my mentors taught me this beautiful trick. He said, find the biggest cat pile that you can find and jump into it, because that's where it's all about problem solving, right? You find the biggest cat pile or find the biggest problem, or however you want to say it, and jump into it, because that's where you can make your biggest difference. So for me, that's always been the criteria for deciding what I want to do next in my career. And it's always been about the learning opportunity. But going to Adlan's question, very, very good question. Skills. So the first thing, my friend, is how you think. First thing, before anyone looks, so people will not even look at your skills if you don't pass the first test. And the first test is your mindset test. That's where your aptitude for learning, your hunger for learning, how trainable are you? Are you a continuous learner? How good are you in unlearning learning will all come into play. If you are able to pass that hurdle first, then it gets into skills. But without that, I just want to be very clear, you can have all the skills, but your relevance is unfortunately going to be low. So focus a lot on aptitude and mindset. I think that's key. Skills can be built. So a lot of people like will hire for aptitude, will have hire for passion, will hire for learnability, and then say that we will train them on skills. And a lot of companies, I mean, today companies are doing that. They're hiring people with 2, 3 years experience or maybe even less. Then they prefer to do that because they're much more trainable, right? When it comes to skills, I would say focus on a foundation, building a strong foundation, because no matter how much you know, this industry will always be a step ahead because technology is changing so rapidly, you will never catch up.
Mhm.
So build a foundation of the core skills in technology, be it AI, data analysis, depending on the field, of course, that you're going into. But cybersecurity, these are some of the key areas. It's very, very important to have at least foundational knowledge in some of these areas. Then, most importantly, are the soft skills, which are
Yeah.
frankly becoming more and more important in today's world. Your ability to communicate, because today, the biggest requirement of a data scientist is not to just work with data and do the magic with data, but it is to tell the story. So you have to be a really good storyteller. And the same applies to engineers. Today, engineers have to sit down and work with customers, and you have to be able to communicate. They say that those who can tell a good story rule the world. Today is when that is more true than ever. So communication becomes key. Teamwork, your ability to collaborate with the people becomes tremendous, especially in a hybrid remote working model. Your ability to collaborate, reach out becomes tremendously important. Project work becomes tremendous. Project management becomes so. These are some of the core soft skills that you have to build along with your foundational skills. But once again, it's going to be all about the passion, the aptitude, the learnability that you bring to the table.
Just a point about NASSCOM and the way NASSCOM is going about or trying or pushing the youth in skilling, in the areas of skilling. What is that? What is being done to make sure that the youth of tomorrow can learn or has the opportunity to learn?
So, Ashutosh, there's a huge problem in the industry. On one hand, as everyone says, IT, it's raining jobs. There are more jobs than you can handle. The companies are hiring like they have never hired before. But there's a huge shortage of talent. So what's happening is companies are hiring, but this pool is this small. And everyone is trying to hire from that pool, resulting in absolute chaos and disruption. Now, what is desperately needed for the sustainability of the industry and also to ensure that we create more jobs in the country is to broaden that pool. And the reason the pool is so small is today, very few, it's hardly a few, maybe 100,000 odd people who have the skills, the digital skills that is required for the new age jobs. While new jobs are getting created, these jobs require very different skills from what the jobs of the past required. And we are not changing fast enough. So there is a strong need today to accelerate skill development and grow the pie. And that's where NASSCOM has joined hands with Ministry of IT, MIT, to kickstart an initiative called Future Skills Prime to provide that opportunity to the youth, to the existing workforce, pretty much to anyone who desires to upskill, to build not just deep skills, but also those foundational skills that I talked about, which is becoming a must for employability. So yeah, it's a Future Skills Prime. We launched the initiative around a few months back. Fabulous uptake, around 300,000 people already registered and going through. And there are two data points which really made me happy. One was we have a much higher rate of completion. We have around 13 or 14% completion rate, which is much higher than what a standard MOOC would have. And second, more than 30% of the people who are coming to the platform are women. I would love to see that go up to 50, but I will take 30 for now.
Okay, so very interesting. Since you mentioned about MOOC, the massive online learning courses, if for a lot of people that is important, one way to keep learning, how good an opportunity is that, or how smart an opportunity is that as you go ahead and try and keep adding to your skills? And this is talking about the youth in mind. People who are in their 20s probably would want to keep learning.
I would say that it is a must do. It's a must do. Today, when you go for an interview, if you are able to show that you are on one of these platforms, a good platform, whatever it is. For example, I'll give the example of NASSCOM because that's a platform I'm very familiar with. But on Future Skills, every time you learn a new skill, you get a badge, right? And a badge that you can show. One strong thing we advocate to everyone is put those badges on your resume, put those badges out on your social media, because that's what will give companies, your hiring managers, the understanding that you are indeed hungry to learn, and you have already started on your upskilling journey. But that's a must do. That's an absolute must do when if you want to be relevant enough, whether it is to get a job or to start a business, whatever, to become an entrepreneur, whatever. So I don't think, Ashutosh, it's any more a good to do or how important. It's a must do if you want to be relevant in the digital economy.
Okay, there's Venkatesh has a question. As a beginner, what path to choose that my learning curve is maintained and I'm in touch with the technology changes that are happening? It's something that everyone has to grapple with today.
Venkatesh, a lot will have to do with your own interest also. What are you interested in? What is your passion? Because there has to be something that you're interested in, and I would strongly advise to try and find that marriage between your interests and career as much as possible, because that's what gives us the satisfaction at the end of the day. We can all do a 9 to 6 or 9 to 10 job and get paid, but after a point, if you don't wake up feeling wonderful about going to work, then imagine this is what you do for more than 50% of your life. So you should be enjoying it, right? So I think it has a lot to do with your interest. But Venkatesh, this is where I would strongly dissuade you from getting generic advice. This is where the mentors count. So, it's a great question you're asking, but this is where you should be sitting down with your mentors to figure out what's the best way forward, because each of you are so different. You have different skills, you have different strengths, capabilities, different interests. The only thing I will say, this is when you really need to spend some good time with your mentor to figure out the way forward.
Yeah, and also we're also talking at a time, Debjani, when because of what was happening around us, the percentage of women, the number of women, absolute number as well, in the workforce is falling, unfortunately. What would you suggest to the women who may be, for whatever reasons, falling off the workforce? This is something that each one of us needs to talk about as well.
Absolutely. So there are two things that's going on. One is talent is rewriting rules of competition for business and for us as individuals. If I have a better aptitude than you, Ashutosh, and I've spent my time teaching myself more, I'm going to be considered more employable than you. Doesn't matter what my gender is.
Correct.
Sadly, women have to do a lot more to get themselves upskilled. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of women are losing jobs, or, one reason, not there is another reason, but one reason is they're falling short on the talent front. And one of the core key advice I give to women is make upskilling your biggest priority in life. If you want a career, you have no option. And several companies today are running focused initiatives to upskill women. For example, even at NASSCOM, we are running a program called W2RT, Women Wizards Rule Tech. Very corny, but women love that name. Which is all about focused mentoring for women in technology. And we're very proud. We've touched more than 3,000 women as part of the program. And this is deep mentoring that happens. But companies benefit from it tremendously, because this is what brings women on par when it comes to pure talent play, right? So that's one problem. Women have to upskill and upskill themselves much faster. You cannot say that I don't have the time to upskill. That is not going to work. You have to figure out, I know it's tough, but you have to figure out the time to upskill. And the second related issue is work from home has not been very good for women. We've all said that it's wonderful for women because you don't have to travel, etc. What we forget is women are also primary, the caregivers. And when they are at home, unfortunately, the family forgets that the man may have fixed hours carved out for his work and then for his family. But for a woman, especially with kids studying at home, it's 24 hours on. And to be able to manage work commitments and 24 hours of family, it is humanly, frankly, not possible. And the number of women who have reached out to me to say that this is just not working, because when we used to go to office, we used to get those few hours off to focus on something else, to focus on work, to focus on ourselves. Now even that's gone away. So I think we have to find a permanent solution. And I think, the hybrid model will give women the choice to come back when they want to. But also long term, Ashutosh, I think there has to be this co-parenting and um, jointly looking after the house, something that my parents did so well, has to become the norm in India. Unfortunately, it still isn't. We are far from it. We have to realize that um, bringing up kids and looking after the house, etc., is not a gender specific role.
It's a shared responsibility.
Absolutely. I think that mindset change is going to be critical for long-term change.
Okay.
So to all the men listening on this platform, start today.
Okay, so never too late to start, a point that Debjani also made about the learning part of it. If we have time, we'll just push one more question. If you can give a short answer for that, Debjani. We can measure skills today, says Amit Mitra, but how do we measure learnability from an employer's point of view?
So Amit, it's all about the conversation you have. For example, in my interviews, the conversations about, I never talk about work. I always talk about books the person has read, podcasts they have listened to. I talk about which MOOCs they are part of. What are they studying currently? What topics are they really interested in? I talk about just what's happening around the world. What's your views on Afghanistan? What's your view on cybersecurity? What is AI going to kill all of us? And what I look for may not have the perfect answer, but is the person able to have a point of view? Is the person curious enough, informed enough to be reading on these topics and have a point of view? And if not, is the person honest enough to tell me, I have not actually read up on this topic, but if you give me a day, I will. And I do give them a day or 2 days. And I say, okay, read about it and then come back. So it's all about the conversations that you have. And this one, you can't fake it, because most of the times the people on the other side, if they care enough about it to be spending the interview time asking you questions, they're following it themselves.
Okay, what an interesting conversation I've had. Just to give you a little context, not that it's really required, Debjani, but for some people, it may still be important to have it. $180 billion industry for India, at the cutting edge of technology often, has taken India global, employs, if I remember correctly, more than 4 million. I hope I'm right with
4
my
million,
number.
190, by the way, at last count. And
Okay.
yes, 4.5 million.
Okay, so that's the numbers. That's the kind of numbers. So 190 billion in revenues. That's the IT services and the BPM industries, and 4.5 million workers, and still looking to grow and grow very strong. So that's the perspective that Debjani Ghosh gets. And of course, I'd always suggest you must follow Debjani on Twitter so that you get a sense of what all fun she also has beyond the work, because that is also about the passion that you bring. And I must mention, Debjani, here, some of that includes, some of the puja thing that you follow during the Shera. So all that is important for the youngsters to learn as well. Debjani, thank you so much for being with us on this and addressing all the students. Anything that you'd like to probably mention in a couple of lines? Do you think so?
Stay hungry, stay curious. I think that's it. That's the only mantra for the youth.
Awesome. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Debjani, for being with us, and wonderful speaking to you. What a
Thank you,
story you have.
Ashutosh. Always enjoy our conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.